Ryan here is the oldest man in my family, 29 years old. My three siblings are Anna, 27, Eric, 25, and Lily, the younger 22-year-old. Mostly of my life we have been close. Sunday dinners were a holy custom. Birthdays were usually noisy and full of laughter. Even on odd weekends we would find ways to be together. The core of my social life, my family, was my rock. At least that's how it used to be. Things have felt lately differently. One finds it difficult to articulate. I originally considered it to be only in my thoughts. I would come up for Sunday dinners, and it appeared like the second I entered the room would change the nature of the conversations. I tried to brush it off, convinced myself I was overanalyzing it. There would be inside jokes, shared laughter about apparently recent events, and when I questioned what they were talking about, I would receive evasive responses like, "Oh, just catching up," or "You had to be there." Perhaps I was acting from paranoia. But then something happened that I couldn't overlook. It was a random Tuesday night, and I was looking through Instagram before bed. Eric's girlfriend had shared a story and a picture of my family seated in a luxury restaurant. All of them were there, grinning, laughing, and radiating the kind of time of their lives. I wasn't there, though, and initially I assumed it might be an old picture, but the timestamp indicated otherwise. That evening it was picked up. My stomach turning, I sat up in bed staring at the TV. Neither had I known about this supper. Nobody had discussed it. I brought it up informally with my mother the following day. I said, "Hey, seen Eric's girlfriend's post?" Not wanting to come out as accusing. Last night's supper seemed to be good. What occasion was it? Mom produced an odd, guilty smile for me. "Oh, that was only something done last minute. We assumed you were preoccupied with work. That didn't fit me. Although my calendar isn't precisely erratic, they normally check in with me. Though I chose not to press it at the moment, the discomfort persisted for several weeks. There would be pictures of brunches, gaming evenings, maybe a beach excursion. None of them called for me. And it wasn't just Eric and his lover. I discovered everyone in my family was involved. Not only was it not simply the pictures, but they were arranging stuff and excluding me for no apparent reason. Jokes and references I missed in our family group chat, I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just a phase. I would scroll back, trying to locate the background, but it was like reading talks from another world, a version of my family I wasn't part of. Perhaps I had done something to annoy them without thinking about it. Still, I couldn't think of anything no matter how hard I tried to rack my head. There had been no falling out or significant arguments between us. Based on what I knew, everything was good. One Sunday, the breaking point occurred. Mom phoned that afternoon to let me know supper was canceled. She merely said they would let me know when they scheduled the next one. She did not explain anything. Though I was a little let down, I didn't give it much thought until later that evening when I was browsing Instagram once more and came over another post by Eric's girlfriend. Everyone in my parents' house was pictured together, seated around the dinner table. The same table we had Sunday dinners on for as long as I could recall. Everybody turned up, except me. That was the flashpoint for everything to click. There was no accident about this. This did not happen at random. It felt like a stomach strike. My family was purposefully rejecting me, and I had no idea why. Though I wanted to call them right then and there, I couldn't muster myself to do it. I sat there staring at the picture, trying to find out what had changed. To merit this, what had I done? The next few days were trying. I stayed quiet in the group chat and skipped responding to texts. Not without collapsing or lashing out, I couldn't force myself to meet them. Rather, I became more focused on their social media, searched for hints, but found nothing clear. Desperate for answers, I resorted to Reddit. It felt as though someone had erected a wall around me, and I was stuck outside looking in. I asked whether anyone else had gone through anything comparable and blogged about what was happening. The answers were simply too plentiful. People assured me I was not insane, that something was clearly happening, and I had to face my family. But things took an even more unusual turn as I was building the nerve. I received a private message from an unidentified user. "I know why they're avoiding you," said, "but you're not ready to hear it yet." Before I could respond, the account vanished. More lost than ever, I sat there fixated on my screen. Could something be so large that they thought they had to keep it secret from me? I understood I could not dodge this anymore. I owed it to them to face it. Whichever the truth was, I had to know. That weekend presented an opportunity. Mom recommended a laid-back family breakfast at a neighboring cafe, and I made the decision to arrive early to get us a place. One by one, they trickled in. If they were hiding something, they wouldn't be able to hide it when we were face to face. Eric came first, then Anna and Lily. Lastly, my parents. Seeing me early startled them all, almost as though they hadn't expected me to show up. There was great dense tension in the air. Eric continued staring at his phone. Anna was very silent. Mom's grin seemed forced. I started small talk first, attempting to keep things light. But I could not hold back anymore as we got settled. I mentioned the Instagram post, that from the Sunday meal they had without me. I expected guilt, perhaps accompanied by an apology. Mom tried to dismiss it. Instead, they just looked at each other, startled. She said, "We thought you were busy with work," as if it were no great issue. I wasn't buying it. "This is not the first time," I said. I enumerated the other activities I had heard about. The weekend trip, the brunches, the beach outing. The table stopped. Eric looked sideways at Mom, as though he wanted to say something but hesitated. Avoiding eye contact, Lily fiddled with her napkin. Though I ignored it, it felt as though the entire cafe was staring at us. I needed responses. "Did I offend you?" With trembling in my voice, I asked, "Is there any reason you have been excluding me?" The silence was intolerable. Eric cut Mom off when she at last began to say, "It's not a big deal. You're making something out of nothing." Looked annoyed, he said, "There's a reason. But it's complicated." Dad shot him a warning glance, but damage was done. I insisted on knowing what was so complex they couldn't simply tell me. Nobody spoke. I got up, shook, tried not to let tears flow. "I am due the truth," I said. Mom called after me as I left, but I didn't turn around. "If you can't give me that," I said. Not knowing where I was going, I got in my car and drove. I needed to get away. That evening, Lily texted me. She begged me more time to clarify since she said it was not what I had assumed. I didn't reply. For what was there to say? Desperate for guidance, I posted an update on Reddit, not knowing why my own family was hiding from me. The comments poured in, full of theories, from secret family secrets to financial crisis to hidden affairs, along with indignation and support. One remark really stayed with me. "The only way out is through. Keep going till you find the truth." That is exactly what I intended to accomplish. Storming out of breakfast, I wrestled with a mixture of fury and uncertainty all weekend. Eric's expression upon saying, "It's complicated," kept playing over in my thoughts. Complexed how? My family was behaving as though there was some large, horrible secret that I couldn't understand why they wouldn't just tell me. Were we not meant to have mutual trust? Lily's book stayed with me too. "It is not what you believe. Please give us a little more time." What did that even mean? Extra time for what? How can I keep lying to you? I responded nothing. I failed. My thoughts whirled, and I needed clarity. I entered full detective mode during the next 2 days. Should they lie to me, I would find it out on my own. My first action was opening a fresh Instagram account. My best buddy Jess helped me create a phony profile and follow relatives and their close pals. It didn't take long to locate something. If they were publishing stuff they didn't want me to see, this was my route in. 2 days later, Lily shared a narrative, a screen grab of a text thread she obviously intended not to reveal. My heart fell when I caught a glimpse of the group chat moniker, Family Time, no Ryan, in the image corner. I grabbed a screenshot before the story vanished and sat there staring at it, feeling queasy. They actually held a group conversation without me. This was more than a few missed invitations. They have set out a whole area meant for my exclusion. My own family is here. That evening I called Lily. I felt as though the ground had collapsed beneath me. I knew if I pushed her, she was most likely to break. She picked up and her voice was wobbly. She must have understood why I was calling. "I saw your post," I started, not thinking through politeness. "What topic does the No Ryan group chat cover?" A protracted silence preceded her response. "Ryan, I swear it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," I said, my voice shaking. She paused for a bit, then said, Because right now, it looks like my entire family is going out of their way to shut me out. The group chat was made a few months ago, she added, her words pouring out in a hurry. We cannot tell you something. It is not about excluding you. Personal item. What? I asked for. What is so intimate that it calls for keeping me apart from my own family? She said, I can't tell you, softly. Her dread was real, and it only made me more enraged. It is not my place. Who is it if it is not your place? She begged me not to tell our parents that she had let anything slip, but I was too frustrated to reassure her since nobody else seemed ready to say anything. I hung up, and my mind flew. Whichever this was, it was not little. It could not be. Why would one possibly be justified in starting a secret group chat to discuss behind my back? Later that evening, as I tried to put things together, my head wandered back 6 months earlier. That fits when my family began to feel strange. It was also around the time Kevin and I split up. The link felt clear in retrospect. At first, or at least they behaved like they did, my family had liked Kevin. He dropped by Sunday dinners, hung around with my brothers, and even got along with my parents. But their behavior changed in the weeks preceding our split. They quit inquiring about him, and any time I brought him up, they would go off topic. I decided to get in touch with Kevin, as at the time I considered it just a coincidence, and now I wasn't so sure. After all that had transpired, it felt strange. Nevertheless, if someone knew what was going on, it might be him. He seemed startled when he picked up. Hey Ryan, it has been some time. Yeah, I answered, trying to seem laid back. I simply have to ask you something. Between you and my family, did anything happen prior to our split? Something I am not familiar with? He paused long on his end. Ryan, I don't think I should. Kevin, please, I said, interrupting. I believe you have some bearing on my exclusion from my own family. If you know anything, I need you to tell me. He paused, then sighed heavily. There was a situation, he said deliberately. But it's not my business to inform you. I apologize to Ryan. I am not involved. Before I could press him farther, he hung off the line. More perplexed and annoyed than ever, I looked at my phone. What circumstance? Why was everyone behaving in this way? Life and death were at stake here. Desperate for clarity, I wrote yet another update on Reddit. Once more, the comments arrived loaded with wacky ideas and support. My family was hiding it to keep me safe. Some believed Kevin had shezzed. Others conjectured about financial drama or perhaps a hidden child. One reply, though, chilled me to no end. Your family believes they are shielding you. They want you not to learn what happened last year. That night I received another message from a burner account. It said, Your family finds you unable to handle the facts. Ask them about Kevin. Before I could respond, the account disappeared. The following day, I drove unannounced to see my folks. I just strolled in and caught them in the middle of dinner instead of knocking. Startled, they looked up as I stood there in the doorway, clutching my phone like a lifeline. We need to talk, I whispered, my voice trembling. I am aware of the group conversation. You have been covering something from me, and I'm not leaving until you give me the truth. My dad avoided my gaze by looking down at his plate while my mom's face crumbled. Eric came in before they could react. His voice shrill. He froze when he noticed me, then turned to them. Just tell him, he murmured. He deserves to know. My dad gave him a warning glance, but Eric persisted. Dad, this is unfair. You cannot keep lying to him. Eric grabbed his jacket and bolted out, slamming the door behind him before I could register what was happening. The room's tension felt like it would suffocate. Turning back to my parents, they still wouldn't meet my eye. Ryan, my mother murmured at last, her voice shaking. It's not what you think. Just trust us a bit longer, I said again, my voice breaking. Given months of lying to me, how am I supposed to believe you? She began to cry, but I did not find myself able to console her. I drove aimlessly for hours trying to make sense of everything that night. I went without another word and slammed the door behind me. Though the elements were there, the picture they created remained unfinished. Whatever my family was concealing, it was not minor. I wouldn't give up either. I would have to learn on my own if they were reluctant to share with me. Not until I was at last at truth. Following the argument at my parents' house, I felt as though I was on the brink of something major, something that may completely ruin my life. Eric's anger and his hurried departure, telling them to just tell me, confirmed that whatever they were hiding wasn't little. Each of them had been carrying that weight. The issue was that night, as I sat in my car gazing at the vacant streets, I realized I could not wait for them to come clean. The first step was facing Eric, since they were not going to provide me answers. I had to find them myself. He seemed the closest of everyone in my family to breaking. I could see the truth shining on his face, that which I wished to know. I texted him next morning. "Can we meet? I have to understand what is happening, please." After hours without any reply, my phone buzzed as I was about to give up. He said succinctly, "Come over tonight, we will discuss." My gut nodded as I traveled to his place that evening. Eric seemed uncomfortable when I arrived. He let me in silently, gesturing for me to curl up on the couch. We sat silently for a minute, the weight of what was about to happen hanging in the air. At last, I broke the quiet. "Eric, I cannot stand this anymore. What's happening? Why are people behaving as though I belong nowhere in the family?" With a heavy sigh, he ran a hand over his hair. "Ryan, this is quite challenging. Not even sure where to start." "Try the beginning," I murmured, my voice stiffer than I felt. "Because I'm done being shut out," Eric said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Do you recall Kevin and you splitting apart?" "Of course," I answered him. "How could I overlook?" "Okay, well, you don't know about what happened before that." My chest clenched. "What do you mean?" Eric hesitated, his jaw moving as if he were fighting himself. At last he continued. "One of Mom's friends saw Kevin out with another man. They were affectionate while seated at some bar. It was more than just friendly. The remark struck me like a gut punch. "What?" Eric said. "She took a picture and sent it to Mom," whispering, his voice hardly audible. "Mom showed it to Dad. They resolved to face Kevin together. My hands were shaking. They asked him what was going on." And Eric winced, as if he wanted not to say the next line. "Kevin said he had been cheating." I felt as though the room had lost all of its air. "He told them he had been seeing someone else, and that he intended to call things off with you." My heart hammered in my chest as I tried to sort through what Eric was telling me. "So, my boyfriend was cheating on me, and nobody thought to tell me?" Eric said fast. "They thought they were protecting you. Kevin asked them not to tell you. He said he wanted to finish things orderly and without messy results. And they agreed." "They agreed," I said again, my voice getting louder. "Are you really serious right now? Rather than be honest with me, they struck a deal with my unfaithful boyfriend." Eric hesitated. "Ryan, I'm not claiming that call was the right one. From the beginning, I warned them this would explode up in front of them. But Mom, she worried so much about you getting hurt. She reasoned that not knowing would make life simpler for everyone." I snipped. Eric lacked a response because it sure as hell wasn't easier for me. I attempted to gather his head around everything while he just sat there staring at the floor. My family had deliberately plotted with Kevin to control my life. Not only had they concealed a secret from me. Thinking they understood what was best, they had made decisions for me. "What about the group chat?" My voice cold, I asked at last. "Was that part of this too?" Eric nodded slowly, grudgingly. "It commenced with the divorce. They wanted to avoid making a mistake and inadvertently utter something that would reveal it. I suppose they created the group chat to organize." I felt nauseous. I said, "Unbelievable. You were all in on this, were you not?" Eric chose not to defend himself. "I'm sorry, Ryan. Yes, I am. Every time I mentioned it, Mom closed it down. I wanted to tell you. She insisted it was better this way." I left Eric's flat feeling as though the ground had changed underfoot. Not only because of what Kevin had done, but also because my family, had supported the treachery, stung hard. They had kept me in the dark, determining what I could and could not manage. Though underlay a terrible sadness, the rage blazed within me. These were the people I most trusted, and they had betrayed that confidence. When I returned home, I shared everything on Reddit. The answer came right away and was overpowering. On my part, many were enraged and labeled it a grave betrayal of confidence. Some people noted that even if my family might have had genuine intentions, their behavior was manipulative and domineering. Others flatly advised I should cut contact with them. One comment really struck me. Your family took away your right to cope with your own relationship. That summed it up exactly. They made you feel like an outsider even if they thought they were shielding you. They had removed my agency, my capacity to face Kevin on my own terms. I was then left to pick up the fragments. The following day, I visited my folks once more. I was going to let them dismiss me this time. They both looked up when I walked in, surprised. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm but chilly. "Eric told me everything," said my mother, whose face crumbled right away, and tears ran down her cheeks. "Ryan, don't," I said in interruption. "Tell me you were shielding me, not crying, and I will know. How much damage do you suppose you have done? You gave me nothing at all. You simply made it worse." My dad talked first. "Ryan, there was nothing else we could have done. You thought you had the right to make decisions for me," I yelled. "You were terrified I couldn't handle it, so you believed you could run my life. How nasty that is, do you know?" They both stopped talking. Now my mother was crying, but I lacked the stamina to console her. Finally, I murmured, too tired and too angry, "I don't know if I can forgive you for this." "You broke my trust in ways I can't even explain," I said. Then I turned and left them silent. For the next few days, I avoided their calls and texts. I needed room to go over everything. Knowing I could not manage this on my own, I contacted a therapist. I needed help rebuilding, not only with my family but also with myself, if I were going forward. Having faced my parents, I felt as though I was living in the wake of an explosion. My life's fragments were all around me, and I had no idea how to begin to put them back together. Though the loss was also terrible, my family betrayed me. These were the people I most trusted worldwide. Now every contact felt contaminated. I chose to temporarily go no contact. I needed room, space to think, space to feel, space to work out what the heck I wanted to do next. I disabled the family group chat on social media, turned off their texts and calls, and silenced them. Though it was difficult, it was essential. I turned mostly on Jess, my best friend, during that time. "Ryan," she remarked one night as we sat on her couch, "I know you're wounded, and you have every right to be." She had been my sounding board through this entire disaster and would not hesitate to call me out when I needed it. "You cannot carry this out by yourself. You should speak with someone who can assist." She was right. The next day, I contacted a therapist to schedule my first visit. I let myself fly into the workplace. My therapist listened carefully and then said something that stayed with me. "It sounds like your family thought they were protecting you, but their actions were controlling and dismissive." My therapist laid everything out: the lies, the group chat, the deal with Kevin, the way my family had made decisions for me like I was a child unable to handle the truth. Hearing that validation felt like a weight lifting off my chest. They deprived you of your capacity to make your own decisions, thereby fundamentally betraying trust. I had been wondering if I was overreacting or too sensitive for so long. Nonetheless, I wasn't. 2 weeks into my distance from my family, I received an unexpected email from Kevin. My emotions were real and I had every right to be enraged. Though first I wanted to delete it without reading, curiosity won out. The communication was protracted and rife with apologies. He stated he regretted how he had handled the split and corroborated everything Eric had told me. "I let your family convince me that hiding the truth was the best thing for everyone," he wrote. "I realized later that I only made things worse, even though I thought I was sparing you suffering." Reading his words felt like opening an old wound. "I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. Hope you will find peace." I shared the email with my therapist, who helped me sort through the whirlwind of feelings it set off. I had been trying to bury memories of our relationship, of the breakdown, of the weeks I spent blaming myself for something I didn't not even realize was occurring. She counseled me to concentrate on what I wanted rather than answer right away. Do I need closure? Was it wiser to let the past go, or should I have interacted with Kevin? At last, I chose not to respond. I owed Kevin nothing, so opening that door seemed like turning around. I had to concentrate on ahead. My aunt surprised me next. Growing up, she had been like a second mother to me, and early on, when things started to fall apart, I contacted her. She had been quiet and wary back then, but now it seemed she had decided it was time to come clean. We met at a coffee shop and she wasted no time. "Ryan," she replied, "you have every right to feel hurt, and I know you are." She clarified that although your mother was younger, she had been in a committed relationship with a man who had cheated on her. It tore her and left years-long wounds. "She frelled when she learned about Kevin," my aunt stated. "She sought to protect you since she wanted you to avoid what she went through." Hearing that background helped somewhat. She believed she was shielding you. It helped me to better grasp my mom's perspective, even though it did not pardon what she had done. She was attempting to save me from suffering she had gone through personally, not to damage me. Not long after that meeting, Eric contacted me once more. The issue was that she had taken away my agency in trying to protect me. "Ryan, I know we messed up," he remarked over the phone, suggesting family therapy this time. "We want to fix this. We have been discussing this. We aim to repair the confidence we undermined, but we cannot do it without you." I was not sure how to answer. Part of me wanted to turn away the concept completely. Why should I be the one to help mend what they broke? But another side of me, the side that still loved my family despite all, wanted to think it was possible. "We'll do whatever it takes," Eric said. "We want you to join us when you're ready. We have already started seeing a therapist on our own." I told him I would consider it. And that is what I meant. I could not make a decision this easily. The last piece of the jigsaw arrived a few days later in the form of a letter. It began this whole series of events with the family friend who had seen Kevin in the bar. The letter said, "She insisted it was better if you didn't know." They apologized for their part in the matter, saying they had tried to tell me straight about Kevin's infidelity, but my mom had intercepted them. The letter reinforced what I already knew. My mother's behavior was motivated by fear, not hate. I realize now that was a mistake, and I'm sorry for not standing up to her. Knowing that did not heal the trauma, but I felt it was time for one last chat with my mother. We convened at the park, far from the house and any distractions. "Mom," I continued, "I know why you did what you did." She seemed unsure if I was there to yell at her or forgive her. "I know your history and that you were looking out for me. You did, however, remove my choice, and you must realize something." Tears poured down her cheeks as she heard. "You decided I couldn't handle the truth, and that hurt more than anything Kevin did." "I'm very sorry, Ryan," she said. "I see now how misguided I was. I couldn't face the notion of you going through what I went through." "I know that," I murmured gently. "You cannot, however, shield me from life, Mom. I have to be able to own my errors and meet my own problems. That's how I develop." We both started to cry, but at the conclusion of the chat I felt as though a weight had been taken off. She pledged to accept my boundaries and let me lead my own life, so improving upon herself. It was a start. It did not solve everything. For now, I am daily handling problems. Though I'm open to the prospect, I haven't determined whether I'm ready for family therapy yet. Though I want to believe it may be mended, my faith in them has been betrayed. Though it will take time, probably a lot of time, I am ready to attempt. Following my chat with my mother, I had a faint hope. Though not exactly forgiveness, not yet, it was a beginning. She had owned her mistakes, even if her thinking lessened the hurt of the betrayal. Eric kept following up on family therapy, and for the first time I thought she really recognized the extent of damage done. He was tenacious, but not aggressive. "We are not expecting miracles," he said on one of our calls, "but we want you the freedom to express anything you need to. Not a single justification or interruption, just an opportunity to begin correcting this." I gave it careful attention. Therapy might help us rebuild some trust, but it was not going to suddenly solve everything. I finally agreed to go. The first session was embarrassing. We convened in a neutral office environment accompanied by a therapist they had been seeing for some weeks. As we all sat in a circle, My mom, dad, Eric, Anna, and Lily. The air was charged with conflict. The therapist started by establishing ground rules. No interrupting, no defying, and no discounting of each other's emotions. Everyone seemed anxious, as though they were afraid to say the wrong thing. Then she turned to face me. "Ryan, this is your area. When ready, you can begin." I inhaled deeply, and the words came out of me like a tsunami. "You did not only lie to me," I murmured, my voice shaking. "You controlled my life. You treated me like a child when you thought I cannot handle the truth." The room was quiet as I talked. "You betrayed my trust, and I have no idea how I might gain it back." Tears welled up in my mom's eyes. My dad fixed his gaze on the floor. My siblings seemed as though they wanted to vanish. I let loose without thinking twice. When I finished, my mother broke down. I told them how excluded I had felt, how wounded I had been by the secret group conversation, how betrayed I had been that Kevin had made a bargain with instead of speaking the truth. Through sobs, she added, "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I know now that all I did was hurt you. I thought I was protecting you. My siblings took turns apologizing too. I should have trusted you to handle the reality." Eric said he knew it was wrong from the beginning but lacked the confidence to speak out. The hardest part was hearing my dad speak. Anna and Lily both said they were only following Mom and Dad's lead, but now they understood how destructive that was. He had been so silent all through this process, and I had thought he was simply following suit. When he at last opened up, though, I could see shame in his eyes. "Ryan, I failed you," he said. "I ought to have challenged your mother. She should have heard me say that this was not the appropriate approach to managing things, but I didn't, and I'm rather sorry for it." The therapist urged me to establish limits as the session continued. "What from them going ahead do you need?" she asked. I considered it for a bit. "No more secrets," I declared with conviction. "I no longer need decisions made for me. Should a problem arise, you come right forward to address it. I'm out if you cannot respect it as well. No second chances." Everyone nodded in accord. After the session, Eric pulled out his phone and erased the secret group chat straight in front of me. "This thing was a mistake," he remarked, his voice steady. It was a little step, but it seemed like progress. Anna and Lily agreed, pledging to utilize the main family conversation going forward. "We're never doing anything like this again." Though it was a demonstration of seriousness about going ahead, it did not erase the betrayal. In the weeks after therapy, I began to see little but significant changes. More often than not, my family checked in with me in a way that felt natural, rather than as though they were trying to mend our relationship under pressure. Always making sure I was included, they asked me to dinner, game evenings, and other laid-back hangouts. Though it wasn't perfect, there were still embarrassing situations and times when I questioned their authenticity. It was better than it had been. We also began a new custom: monthly family dinners where we freely shared whatever came to us. I proposed that at the first dinner we each bring something we were having difficulty with. Originally uncomfortable, Eric broke the pause by confessing how much remorse he had been bearing since the information came out. My mother opened up about her anxiety and how she had been putting her own suffering on me. While it was difficult, it was also healing. It was the first time we had been so honest with one another. I kept going with my own therapy visits. Along with the loss, my therapist guided me through the anger and betrayal. She said losing faith in my family was like losing a part of me, a portion that had always felt would always have my back no matter what. Rebuilding it would take time. I also answered Kevin's email at last and had to be patient with myself. I said succinctly, "Thank you for your apology, but I've moved on. From you, I need closure. I need it for myself. Though this is the final time I will be in touch, I wish you the best." His response was polite and brief. Saying he understood, he wished me well. By the conclusion of that month, I felt as though I was at last beginning the chapter I had been clinging to for far too long. Though we were trying, my family and I were not back where we used to be. Honestly, I wasn't sure we could be. They were trying, and I was carefully letting them back in. I updated Reddit one last time. Thanks to everyone for their help throughout this issue. The turning point occurred at one of our monthly dinners. The answers were mostly friendly. Several people said they were proud of me for standing my position and acting to heal. My mom drew me aside following the dinner. "Ryan," she added gently, "I want you to know how proud I am of you, even though I know I have a long way to go to earn back your trust. For advocating your own rights." Her comments surprised me, but they meant more than I could say for not letting us break you. I felt, for the first time in months, that we might really have a chance to repair what we had lost. Rebuilding trust is a long, meandering road with many dead ends and turns. My family and I kept working on it over the next several months, although the process was far from seamless. There were times when I felt we were headed forward, and then something would happen to cause all of my questions to resurface. Still, I could tell they were trying, and that counted for something. Our healing started mostly with the monthly family dinners. They were first embarrassing, with everyone tiptoeing around one another, terrified to say the wrong thing. But we began to discover a rhythm with time. At one dinner, Lily mentioned how the secret group conversation had made her feel oppressed. We discussed our challenges, our regrets, and, slowly, our dreams for the future. Her voice was faltering. "I didn't want to keep you out, Ryan," she murmured, "but I fretted about upsetting the boat. I reasoned that ultimately things would return to normal if I followed it." Hearing her say that meant more than I imagined. I now see that was incorrect. Her admission seemed difficult, and it made me realize that none of us found this simple. My own therapy sessions remained a lifeline. Along with the betrayal, my therapist helped me sort through the more underlying problems, including my desire for control, my fear of abandonment, and my struggle to let people in after they had harmed me. She reminded me that forgiveness was not about discounting or forgetting what had happened. It was about deciding to go forward for my own benefit. It was not about whether I was ready to completely forgive. I was beginning to let go of some of the resentment. One day, out of the blue, Eric contacted me. "Hey, Ryan," he said. Holding on to it was draining, and I recognized it wasn't helping me heal. "I have been considering your comments in therapy as well as how we eliminated your option. I simply wanted to say, I understand now. That was wrong since we didn't trust you to handle the truth." "I'm sorry." His voice seemed really sincere, and that surprised me. Eric wasn't the kind to share readily, so seeing him take responsibility like that made me feel a little closer to him. "It means a lot to hear you say," I added. "No, it hasn't," he said, knowing this hasn't been easy for you either. "But it's good we are at last discussing it. I want things to be better between us." Bit by bit, the barriers separating us began to fall. My mother started contacting me more, not to keep apologizing, but rather to follow up to find out how I was doing. Usually calmer, my dad began trying to personally engage with me one-on-one. We would walk or sip coffee, and although it wasn't always comfortable, it was real. I still had my doubts. There were days when I questioned whether I would ever completely trust them once more, and whether our connection would always seem to be slightly damaged. Then there were other days when we laughed together or told memories from the past, when I felt maybe, just maybe, we could make it through. The true test arrived on my birthday. My family had usually gone all out with feasts or celebrations, but this year I was not sure what to expect. The first thing I noticed when I walked into my parents' house that evening was a handwritten banner saying, "We're glad you're here." It wasn't flashy or perfect, but it was exactly what I needed. I told them I wanted something small, just immediate family, and to my surprise, they respected my wishes. At supper, my mother offered a toast, and I felt like I belonged once more, first in a long time. She continued, lifting her glass. "Ryan, I know this past year has been really tough. Although we cannot undo the damage we have done, we really admire the way you have handled it." That night, as I drove home, I considered how far we had come. Her comments brought tears to my eyes, and for the first time I felt a flutter of something I hadn't not felt in months. Hope. Though not exactly perfect, not by a long shot, we were trying, and that was sufficient, I came to see. Healing wouldn't happen overnight, but as long as we kept showing each other, I thought we would get there. Looking back on all that has transpired, I have learnt a lot. Love does not mean constantly knowing exactly what it is. The ones that love you the greatest can occasionally inflict the worst damage on you. Though my family and I still have a long road ahead, we are now traveling the road together. Love is about deciding to try again, even if it is difficult. Thank you to everyone who helped me along this road. We are headed in the correct direction, firstly in a long time. In ways I cannot completely articulate, your guidance, support, and tales have been a source of fortitude. Here's to fresh starts, one step at a time. If you find yourself in a similar situation, my experience hopefully reminds you that it's all right to demand better, set limits, and schedule the time you need to heal.